This is the early edition, a curated weekday guide to major news and developments over the past 24 hours, curated by Lizzie Jennings and read by an automated voice. Published April 20th, 2026 on Just Security, an essential resource for those shaping a just and secure world. Here's today's news. Iran war, ceasefire. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Friday, after the announcement of a ceasefire in Lebanon last week, that passage through the Strait of Hormuz would be completely open, but only on a route that runs close to Iran's coastline, and only for the remaining period of the ceasefire. A day later, Iran's military declared that it would retake strict control over the strait until Trump ended the blockade. Trump responded that U.S. representatives were on their way to Islamabad for negotiations ahead of the ceasefire deadline, and that the United States would attack every power plant and bridge in Iran if it did not accept a deal. Tasnim news agency reported that Iranian negotiators had said no negotiations would take place unless the United States ended the blockade. It remains unclear whether negotiations in Islamabad will go ahead. Anushka Patil reports for The New York Times, Daphne Psaladaki, Trevor Honeycutt, and Saad Saeed report for Reuters. President Trump yesterday accused Iran of firing on ships passing through the strait in a total violation of our ceasefire agreement, while a spokesperson for the Iranian Foreign Ministry said it was the U.S. blockade that was a violation of the ceasefire. Trump said on social media that the ships attacked by Iran were from France and Britain, though the two vessels that the UK Maritime Trade Operations Organizations reported hit on Saturday appeared to be Indian-flagged. UK MTO said that gunboats belonging to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps reportedly fired on one vessel, a tanker, without radio warning. In the other incident, a container ship was hit by an unknown projectile. India's External Affairs Ministry said it had summoned Iran's ambassador over the incidents. Anushka Patil reports for The New York Times. Later on Sunday, a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Arabian Sea fired at the engine room of the Tuska, an Iranian-flagged cargo ship, U.S. Central Command said in a statement. Helicopter-borne Marines then seized the vessel. This was the first time a vessel was reported to have tried to evade the U.S.-imposed blockade. Central Command said that 25 other vessels intercepted by a Navy flotilla operating outside the strait had turned around when hailed by Navy crew members. Iran's armed forces warned that they would soon retaliate for what they called armed piracy, according to Tasnim. Eric Schmidt reports for The New York Times. Pakistan appeared to be readying for a fresh round of talks between the United States and Iran today, as Islamabad went on a security lockdown last night, and officials said they would deploy 10,000 extra security forces in the city. The U.S. advance team has already reached Islamabad, a diplomat told The Washington Post. Tyler Pager, Shirin Hakim, Sanam Mahouzi, Rebecca F. Elliott, and Joe Renison report for The New York Times. Mariana Alfaro, Tara Kopp, Joyce Sohyun Lee, and Sammy Westfall report. U.S.-Iranian negotiations, conducted remotely last week, were focused on a 3-page memorandum of understanding to end the war, with one element being that the United States would release $20 billion in frozen Iranian funds in return for Iran giving up its stockpile of enriched uranium. 2 U.S. officials and 2 other sources told Axios. Barak Ravid and Mark Caputo report. Iran war, Lebanon operations. Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem said on Saturday that Hezbollah was fully cooperating with the Lebanese government amid the 10-day ceasefire. Qassem added that Hezbollah would keep its fighters at the ready and listed 5 conditions for extending a ceasefire with Israel, including permanent cessation of Israeli attacks and Israel's complete troop withdrawal. A ceasefire cannot be one-sided. It must be observed by both parties, Qassem said. We will not accept a repetition of 15 months of patience in the face of Israeli aggression while waiting for diplomacy that achieved nothing. Pranav Bhaskar reports for the New York Times. A UN peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon came under attack with small arms fire on Saturday morning, which killed one French peacekeeper and wounded 3 others, French President Emmanuel Macron and UNIFIL said. Everything suggests that responsibility for this attack lies with Hezbollah, Macron wrote on social media. Hezbollah denied links to the attack, calling for caution in assigning blame and judgment until the Lebanese army completes its investigation. Bassem Roué and Samuel Petroquin report for AP News. Thousands of displaced Lebanese returned to the country's south on Saturday, as the ceasefire appeared to be largely holding, despite sporadic Israeli strikes. The Israeli military said on Saturday that it had carried out strikes over the past 24 hours on what it described as terrorists who had approached areas in southern Lebanon, where Israeli troops remained deployed, which the Israeli military said violated the truce. Ewan Ward, Sarah Chaito, and Christina Goldbaum report for the New York Times. The Israeli military yesterday published a map of its new deployment line inside Lebanon, bringing dozens of Lebanese villages under its control. Stretching east to west, the deployment line on the map runs 5 to 10 kilometers deep from the border into Lebanese territory, where Israel has said that it plans to create a so-called buffer zone. Asked whether people who fled the Israeli strikes would be allowed to return to their homes, the Israeli military declined to comment. Mayan Lubel reports for Reuters. Iran war. Other developments. Iran's government announced yesterday that it would restore wider internet access for the country's university professors, Iranian state media reported. The shutdown, which has lasted more than 50 days, has cut access to the internet for most of the country's population. Erica Solomon and Sanam Mahouzi report for the New York Times. The United Arab Emirates Minister of State said yesterday the country had been hit by over 2,800 missiles and drones in the first 40 days of the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran, adding that more than 90% of the targets were civilian infrastructure. Jacob Wendler reports for Politico. The UAE has opened talks with the United States about obtaining a financial backstop in case the Iran war plunges the Gulf state into a deeper crisis, U.S. officials said. UAE Central Bank Governor Khalid Mohammed Balama raised the idea of a currency swap line with Besant and Treasury and Federal Reserve officials in meetings in Washington last week. David S. Cloud, Alexander Sadie, and Nick Timoreos report for the Wall Street Journal. The Treasury Department extended a sanctions exemption on the sale of some Russian oil last Friday. The renewed license will be in effect until May 16 and supersede the sanctions waiver on Russia that expired on April 11. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had first said at a White House briefing on Wednesday that the federal government would not renew the sanctions exemption. Ashley Ahn reports for the New York Times. Energy Secretary Chris Wright said yesterday that he believes gas prices have peaked, but predicted that they may stay above $3 per gallon until next year. Leah Douglas reports for Reuters. Israel-Hamas war. 2 Hamas officials told the New York Times that the group is ready to hand over thousands of automatic rifles and other weapons belonging to its police force and other internal security services in Gaza. Such a step would be a remarkable concession from Hamas, but falls well short of the full disarmament and demilitarization of Gaza, which is at the core of Trump's peace plan. Asked whether the Palestinian Administrative Committee would also be able to confiscate weapons belonging to Hamas's military wing, the 2 officials did not provide a clear answer. Natan Odenheimer and Adam Razgan report. UNICEF said on Friday that it was outraged after Israeli fire killed 2 truck drivers contracted to deliver clean water to families in Gaza. UNICEF said it had suspended activities at the site and called on Israeli authorities to investigate, stressing that humanitarian workers, civilians, and vital water infrastructure must be protected under international humanitarian law. An average of at least 47 women and girls were killed every day in Gaza between October 2023 and December 2025, according to a report by UN Women. Olivia Lepotovin reports for Reuters. Other global developments. Representatives of the Democratic Republic of the Congo government and the Alliance Fleuve Coalition have agreed to refrain from attacking civilians and to facilitate the passage of humanitarian personnel and humanitarian convoys. The U.S. State Department, the DRC, and AFC said in a joint statement on Saturday, Reuters reports. Nearly 900 Rohingya refugees were reported missing or dead in the Andaman Sea and Bay of Bengal in 2025, making it the deadliest year on record for the route, UNHCR said on Friday. More than 1 in 7 of the estimated 6,500 Rohingya refugees who attempted the sea crossing last year were reported missing or dead, the highest mortality rate worldwide for refugee and migrant sea journeys. Olivia Lepotovin reports for Reuters. Rumen Radev's Progressive Bulgaria Party has won Sunday's Bulgarian election, the 8th general election in 5 years. With 87% of the voted counter, his party has secured a majority of at least 135 seats in the 240-seat parliament. The Russians are very, very keen to at least partially compensate for the loss of Orban in Hungary, said Ilian Vasilev, a former Bulgarian ambassador to Russia. It is more than a possibility that the Russians are hoping Bulgaria can help fill the void through Radev. Nick Thorpe reports for BBC News. Catherine Belton reports for The Washington Post. Tech developments. Palantir published a 22-point mini-manifesto based on Alex Karp's book, arguing that Silicon Valley should prioritize national security, economic strength, and Western interests. The post ends by criticizing the shallow temptation of a vacant and hollow pluralism. In Palantir's argument, a blind devotion to pluralism and inclusivity glosses over the fact that certain cultures and indeed subcultures have produced wonders. Others have proven middling, and worse, regressive and harmful. Anthony Ha reports for TechCrunch. U.S. Foreign Affairs. Pope Leo XIV said on Saturday that it was not in my interest at all to debate Trump about the Iran war, but that he would continue preaching the gospel message of peace. Nicole Winfield reports for AP News. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said yesterday that Canada's close ties with the United States were once a strength, but have become a weakness. In a video message, Carney said that Canada cannot control the disruption coming from its U.S. neighbors and cannot bet its future on the hope that it will suddenly stop. Carney said he plans to give regular addresses to Canadians in the weeks and months ahead to update them on what his government is doing to grow Canada's economy and defend its sovereignty. Amanda Stephenson reports for Reuters. U.S. Caribbean and Pacific operations. The U.S. military attacked a boat in the Caribbean Sea yesterday, killing 3 people. The strike raised the death toll to at least 180 in the U.S. campaign against people it accused of smuggling drugs at sea. Eric Schmidt reports for the New York Times. U.S. officials held rare talks in Havana last week with Cuban representatives, including a grandson of Raul Castro, urging political and economic reforms, while offering incentives like restoring internet access via Starlink, a State Department official told Axios. Brazil, Spain, and Mexico pledged on Saturday to step up coordinated aid to Cuba to alleviate what they called the humanitarian crisis caused by the U.S. blockade of the island. In a joint statement, the 3 countries called for sincere dialogue in line with the UN Charter, adding that the Cuban people must be free to determine their own future. U.S. Immigration developments. The Department of Homeland Security recently doubled its fleet of jets to carry out deportations, spending $304 million for 5 claims, according to government documents and interviews. This includes 2 Gulfstreams, which can only accommodate fewer than 20 passengers and are typically used as private jets. Madeline Ngo reports for the New York Times. Of the roughly 200 bills targeting legal and undocumented immigration in state legislatures this year, fewer than 24 have made it into law so far, according to a Washington Post analysis. Opposition from businesses and Christian groups, citing economic harm and moral concerns, has been a key factor in blocking or weakening many of the more aggressive proposals, even in Republican-led states. U.S. domestic developments. The Senate voted on Friday to extend Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act through April 30th. FISA was set to lapse today. Kathleen Hunter reports for Axios. Secret memos obtained by the New York Times reveal that the Supreme Court's modern shadow docket began in 2016, when a conservative majority, led by Chief Justice John Roberts, rushed an unprecedented, unexplained order to block Obama's Clean Power Plan before lower courts ruled. The episode exposed a break from traditional deliberation and helped establish a fast, opaque decision-making process that has since been widely used in major cases. Jody Cantor and Adam Liptak report for the New York Times. A senior federal prosecutor in Miami has withdrawn from an investigation into former CIA Director John O. Brennan over concerns about whether there was enough evidence to justify prosecution, according to sources. Charlie Savage, Alan Fire, and Glenn Thrush report for the New York Times. Dana Nessel, Michigan's Attorney General, responded to Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Harmeet K. Dillon on Friday with a letter that said the allegations of election fraud in November 2024 were baseless and did not justify the Justice Department's demand for election records. Sonia A. Rao reports for the New York Times. The Justice Department has appointed former Trump campaign lawyer Joseph DeGenova to lead the expanded investigation into whether former U.S. officials committed crimes in their inquiries into Trump, a senior law enforcement officer said on Saturday. Charlie Savage and Alan Feuer report for the New York Times. Trump administration actions. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent joined a meeting on Friday between White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles and Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, a source told Axios. Regarding the declaration of Anthropic as a supply chain risk, a Trump advisor said, "This is a big problem. Everyone's complaining. There's all this drama. So this got elevated to Susie to hear Dario out, determine what is bullshit, and start to plot a way forward." The meeting explored potential collaboration on advanced AI tools like Mythos, while balancing innovation with safety concerns, though no clear breakthrough was confirmed. Maria Curie, Mark Caputo, and Dave Lawler report. The National Security Agency is already using Anthropic's Mythos model, despite the Pentagon's insistence that the company is a supply chain risk, two sources said. Maria Curie and Sam Sabin report for Axios. Trump administration litigation. A federal appeals court on Friday allowed construction on President Trump's ballroom project to proceed through early June, pausing, for now, a lower court's order that construction stop after next week. Zach Montague reports for the New York Times. In case you missed it, last week on Just Security. The Missing Convener, NSC's Diminished Role and the Future of U.S. Investment Security. By Eric S. Johnson. The Constitution's Forgotten Term Limit on Military Power. By Matthew B. Lawrence and Mark Nevitt. Africa's AI Strategies Cannot Say No. By Samuel W. Ugwumba. Thank you for listening to Just Security's early edition today, April 20th, 2026. If you enjoy listening, Just Security's analytic articles are also available in audio form on the justsecurity.org website. To stay up to date on Just Security's analysis of law, policy, and current events, go to justsecurity.org, subscribe to Just Security on Substack, and follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads.